All right. We have got a special guest today, Simona Irwin. This is round two. I'm so excited to have you. Simona, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
After last time, I like to scribble on some notes, and every now and then I can decipher them when I review the next day. And the thing that stuck out to me after we talked was, and it would be funny if I could get a clip of this, but you said what keeps us stuck in sensitization is trying to fix it and figure it out. And in that moment, I had a little bit of leaving my body moment, jaw dropping, picking that off the floor because I could really see myself. And not long after we did some one-on-one work together, I spent a lot of time in your gathering stream course, and just wanted to get you back on to take a deep dive into that because I think it's so important. I love the protocol. I've never been someone that could like sequential way of doing things or structure, and I didn't know I needed this, and I had enjoyed it so much. It's such a game changer that I wanted to promote that, to talk about that. And I know you've got a Befriending Fear live coming up
Yeah.
that we will certainly promote. If you stick around to the end, we have a little discount code for you. um, but yeah, let's talk about fear.
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone. It's so funny. It's like once you can see it, it's everywhere.
hmm
And how fear is just kind of infused into our everyday life and our conversation and our culture. I
Yeah.
think that's by design. But why in the hell would you want to befriend fear?
Such a good question. I think for most of us, we found ourselves in a situation where we kind of had no choice.
Mm,
So it was, here I am with these symptoms, with these sensations, with this, 1,000 out of 10 fear response running. And I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to push it away. I'm spending tens of thousands of dollars on supplements and doctors and, courses and all the things. And it's not working. And it just seems to actually be getting stronger, or my life seems to be getting smaller and smaller.
mhm,
And so for me, eventually, after a lot of trial and error, I was like, the only way in is both through, but also like with the fear, not as a goal to get rid of it, but as a goal to, what really is this? And is it possible that I can bring it into my ecosystem and let it be here and see, what we can grow together?
mm. Absolutely. I mean, I could just see myself in that of certainly spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't know if 10 even gets it. I mean, that was maybe 2 decades of trying to fix it and figure it out. And
Yeah.
it feels like you're being productive the more your to-do list
hmm
stacks up.
Yep.
Like you said, there's like I don't want to say instant gratification, but there's a short-term payback, and that we learn to. It's almost like that was the only enjoyment part I was getting out of the force that I was putting on myself, was like, oh, I got this new thing and I'm gonna fix it and this is gonna be it. And I'm really into it and enjoying it for a week, and then it's like, boom, I'm right back here at square one. Did you ever experience that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The hope that we get from every new thing is real, and like we get that hit and it moves through our body and we're like we see the possibility and we anchor into it. And then of course without anything else happening, then it kind of comes and peaks and then we find ourselves again looking for that hit of hope, looking for that relief from symptoms. And when we're always looking, towards, and of course we are, it's really logical and makes sense to how can I find relief from the anxiety and the symptoms? But when that is our goal, then unfortunately we get stuck in that anxiety compulsion loop.
Hmm. And it makes me, when you say that, it makes me think of your screen name on Instagram, and we talked about this a little bit, but on the
Mhm.
last podcast. But it's like we're so used to putting a band-aid on it,
Yes.
running away from it, like,
Yes.
and we hear you got to feel it, right? So we're like, I'll feel this for a second, but why didn't it go away? So there's always this pressure that we're putting on ourselves, uh,
Yeah.
and these fix it, figure it out. Oh, excuse me, I was lost my train of thought there. The antidote to that is oddly going against that and moving towards it.
Yeah.
The buffalo and going into the storm.
Yeah, it's really contrary to what our nervous systems even are, sharing with us. And there's different levels of it too. For some people who maybe they're just experiencing like a tiny little like a little bit of discomfort or anxiety, one of these things could be really helpful to them and it works, and then they move on with their life. But
Mm-hmm.
the people that I'm speaking to with the programs are those of us who find ourselves stuck in this limbic loop
Mm-hmm.
with symptoms and sensitization and sleeplessness and chronic pain, and that it just keeps looping again and again, no matter what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And in those circumstances, it's just reinforcing itself. And the way out is really, I'm going to have to get curious about this. I'm going to have to move closer and help, kind of like taking my brain and my nervous system by the hand and beginning to explore the dark together to create this true felt sense of, we're safe and it's okay. And we can start to bring this mobilization down.
So if you've had a lot of mobilization, a lot of symptoms, and you want to turn this podcast off right now, I encourage you to stick around because that was me. I mean, if you were like, "Hey, Mitch, this sensation that you're feeling, it's okay. It's not going to hurt you," which I don't think it is. I think it's done its damage. I think
Mhm.
adding more fear to it is
Mhm.
what makes us feel like something is wrong and there's
Yeah.
something to fix, and that is super normal. It
Mhm.
is scary, and that's where we need education
Yeah.
to get our higher brain involved in the process, because I think at first we have to learn what
Mhm.
that looks like, what fix it looks like, what those symptoms look like. Um, Last time we were talking about Dr. Claire Weeks, and that was a
Mhm.
big thing for me, was just educating myself on what do these symptoms look like,
Mhm.
and normalizing. I mean, that is what I'm doing with my clients all the time is, oh yeah, super normal. What you're describing sounds like, yeah, you could come up with this conclusion that I'm going to die if this keeps going, and I
Yeah.
gotta figure this out or I'm going to break down. And then the crazy thing is that it makes sense that you want to fix it and figure it out, but ultimately that is what keeps us stuck. And so for me, when you said that, I had been so used to going to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing,
Yeah.
um, that you really stopped me in my tracks, because I've never heard anybody say, yeah, you got to accept it and allow it.
Mhm. Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Like, what type of person, what does it look like to, maybe let's define sensitization a little bit, and then
Mhm.
what does that look like, and ultimately who is this course for?
Yeah. Great question. Yeah, so sensitization, as we mentioned, is a term that was coined by Dr. Claire Weeks, and it was a miracle when I found that term. And with that term, she lists a whole bunch of symptoms. And basically, the term is really referring to what it's like to be in a body that is washed again and again with adrenaline. And when it's washed with so much adrenaline, it becomes hypersensitive to everything, to sound, to vitamins, to medication, to smells, to textures to, it's kind of, for me, the way I explained it was as if I didn't have any skin on my body anymore,
Right.
and I could feel and hear everything, including other people's feelings, including sometimes electricity. Like it was just like, whoa. Um, and so we have labels for all of that. We've created conditions for, all of those medical conditions that kind of, fall into all of those. But Dr. Claire Weeks was like, this is a sensitized nervous system that is in a state of fear chronically that's getting washed with adrenaline, and that adrenaline is creating change in the body. And that change looks like this.
Mhm.
And so sleeplessness, feeling like you've had a nervous breakdown, heightened sense of smell, chronic pain, all of these different things fall under that umbrella.
Yeah, the
Mhm.
pain when I had Scotty Styles on, and that was a big one for me. I know you guys are childhood friends, but
Yeah.
I mean, hearing about pain too, that can create it. It's like so many symptoms can happen from this system and it makes so much sense that it's constantly on alert, scanning for threat. So
Yeah.
how does that system rest and repair and freaking have fun?
Yeah.
It's always scanning for danger. And I want to show everybody
Yeah.
this book. So this is the book,
Yes.
Complete Self-Help for Your Nerves. I have all my clients read that, at least the first chapter, because it's so eye-opening. And I
Yeah.
think that's one of the first things that we can do is just like kind of hold a mirror up and say, this is if this sounds like you. And if you read that, if you have the symptoms and you've dealt with this
Mhm.
and you read this book, it's going to jerk your chain in a good way. It's going to be very sobering. And
Yeah.
what do you think the conclusion is? Is it like, is it in the brain? Is it in the nervous system? How do we get sensitized?
Oh, that's a great question. I think it's partially, I think it's a lot of different things together. And I think it's partially learned response. So there is a type of personality that tends to find themselves here, tends to be some kind of a result of childhood trauma or challenging life experiences, either in your own life or in the lives of your parents or grandparents. So there's like a predisposition of maybe a bit of a sensitized nervous system already. And then when we're raised in families where we don't learn how to process and be with emotions, when we don't learn healthy conflict, when there's no embodiment or ways of moving things through the system, all of those different pieces um, continue to add to the load ultimately. And then I think a huge piece too is the thinking mind and the thinking brain, and all the different division that we can get into around what we want to do and say and what we think is going to keep our relationships and our attachment, or ways that our brain is scaring us with intrusive thoughts or future images. It's like all of these things come together and create really a perfect storm that ends up launching us into this state of being looped in adrenaline.
Yeah, perfect storm is definitely a good way of saying it. And as you were describing this, I'm making some notes over here, and
Mhm.
it just feels like complex. It feels like complex trauma, and everything's just
Yeah.
it's all this, and it is a perfect storm. I think about a lot of the clients that I work with, and myself included, I didn't know what safety felt like. Like that just
Mhm.
didn't happen when I was a kid. And so there's like a layer, and it's like if you also weren't allowed to express emotions, that's just not just guys, that's families. And
Yeah.
so if I think emotions are bad and I'm sent to my room to figure it out every time and be with the intensity of that, I have no way of doing that. So I'm probably going to learn to shut down. And then I
Mhm.
also become afraid of those emotions, or I tell myself I'm bad. And so
Mhm.
moving through that, trusting the wave, which is something
Yeah.
we'll certainly talk about, that's almost impossible. And so then we're stuck in our thinking mind. Our amygdala gets fired up and it's just trying to make meaning out of everything that's going on. And that's
Mhm.
how we operate through life to feel safe. And we're ultimately controlling, and that's our only way of feeling safe. And maybe that works until it doesn't. And then the amygdala, right beside that, there's the shame part of the brain. And so
Yeah.
this meaning gets up and it's I'm bad. I can't be with these emotions. What's wrong with me? And then
Mm-hmm.
we go into now Fix It comes online. I'm gonna go through all the courses and figure out all the things. And I think those things can be helpful. You and I both went through all the courses.
All the courses.
I mean, and I also see some of that that's transferred over into into your life's work here, this
Yeah,
protocol that you've made from all those experiences. So it's not like, so if
exactly.
you're someone who's seeing yourself in this picture and you're like, oh my God, I'm fixing it and figuring it out, I would pause right there and say, well, thank God that we had those survival patterns because that's what helped us survive. And once you can see it, you don't have to be it, and you can take all that hard work that you've been putting in, because that
Mhm.
is very difficult to keep getting up when you're knocked down, when you're sensitized, to keep coming back and still having that hope. If you can
Yeah.
take a little bit of that energy and put it towards, it's almost like unwinding all of this stuff,
Yeah.
then magic can happen in a really short period of time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's what it feels like in the body is like this like tangled ball of yarn. And it's like I try to pull this way and it just gets tighter and this way and it just gets tighter. And every kind of fix it strategy just seems to get me more entangled with it. And part of what we walk through at the beginning is this acceptance and is this like, okay, let's just take a breath. And what if what if everything is okay in this moment? And, here's what's actually happening, and here's what fear is. And if we help people to identify that a huge piece of what's happening is their mind is going into the future and like worst case scenario, what ifs, and we kind of pause that for a moment, then we can start to, with the education, with pausing going into the future, already we can start to bring sensitization down. And then the course is really guiding, like, okay, this is how we untangle this part, and this is how we untangle this part. And eventually it's loose enough that people can do it on their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that was a big one for me. And I remember hearing OCD and being
Yeah.
like, OMG, right? Like what it sounds like a really scary diagnosis, and or that I
Yeah.
you see on TV, or someone who has is a spectrum,
Yeah.
and we think that's really scary. Like, what does OCD and healing look like? Like, how would somebody know that they are fixing and figuring out that they have these compulsions?
That's such a good question. I remember when in my journey, when I first started to have intrusive thoughts as like a part of my journey, I was, in these programs already, thought I was getting better, and then like boom, I was hit with this like severe insomnia. And then I had a reaction to a medication and also was likely, a lot was happening and started to get these intrusive thoughts, and that thankfully led me to understand uh OCD. And at first I was so like absolutely not it. I had a sensitized nervous system, so any sort of label made me feel terrified and made me feel embarrassed and made me feel like I just didn't want it.
Mm,
But then as I read about it, and the more I began to understand, like, oh, what is OCD? And it's many different things, but ultimately it is a cycle of having a thought that releases a thought that is the opposite of who we are, the thought that either scares us or is the opposite of our values or takes us into a strange place, and so some examples of that could be like, what if the world's not real? Or what if I get germs all over my hand and it kills me? Or what if I secretly don't love my partner? Or what if I harm someone accidentally? Or what if I have and I forgot? And so it's like these thoughts that really mess with you. Or it could also be about health. It's like, what if this hurts me? What if this harms me? So there's a spectrum of what it can look like. And some of us, it was really clear, that we're kind of over here. For others that I see often in these programs, they don't really know that they're hitting this point again and again where it's like mold, the constantly trying to cleanse and clear the body of toxins. All of these things can fall on the spectrum because we're feeling something, we're getting an urge to go do it, and then we think it's going to help us feel better and get away from this feeling, but
Mhm.
we end up getting tangled in a loop of trying to get away from the feeling again and again.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I kind of laughed to myself a little bit when you said you got introduced to the term OCD, and you said absolutely not. I think that's so common. I think anything that's been beneficial over these last couple of years, the first time it's introduced to me, I'm like this like jerking away, like no way,
Yeah.
that's not me. Like when I learned about intellectualization, that was a big one for me, which it
Yeah.
goes hand in hand with this. Um, and I also, when you're talking about OCD, the thing that for me that really stuck out, the label scared me, and then what
Mhm.
kind of grabbed me and pulled me back in was understanding that I'm avoiding the things that I love to do.
Exactly.
I felt
Yeah.
like I told every provider or practitioner that I worked with, I feel like I'm a home run hitter, and I'm just sitting on the freaking sidelines waiting to get in the
Yeah.
game. All
Yes.
the things that I love are on the shelf until I can fix this.
Yeah.
And it's like seeing that this is me doing this. This is it's eye opening, and it's like ding 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 ding.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it really robs us from our life. And, even before I was sick, now I realize like, oh, my brain worked this way always. I was always more cautious and controlling. And, I did limit my emotional range and expression by creating like a lot of boundary or not, being around a lot of people and all these layers of protection I put into my life because I had extremely low capacity to feel difficult feelings. And I never would have said that was true about me. I would have said the opposite. But eventually I got to see like, no, actually I'm terrified of conflict and I avoid all hard feelings and I do it through working harder or doing something new or doing another cleanse or going on another diet or doing a heavy metal protocol or choose or leaving a relationship or whatever it was to get away from the difficult feeling and and it was so unintentional, rooted in my own trauma, rooted in my nervous system in these different ways, but it was robbing me of my life. And the way that it all played out, it was so hard, it was so painful. And I have to say that it saved my life, that I would not, I don't really know. I think I would have just become a workaholic and maybe would have gotten sick in a different way. And I don't know what would have happened, but if life didn't step in and stop the way that I was running my life, I would never be able to feel the pleasure and freedom and like dance and move and make art and do these communities that I've been able to do now. And I'm so on this end of it, I'm so grateful that I embraced it.
Oh yeah, I mean, on the other side of all that force and control and
Yes.
feeling like we're the glue that is holding life together,
Yes.
that is a lot of freaking pressure. Uh,
Oh.
Life is on the other side of that, and so quickly when we can recognize these patterns and really kind of do the opposite,
Mhm.
so much can happen so quick.
Mm.
And I want to kind of pause here and say Simona has an incredible story. If you want to check that out, we talked a lot about that in our first
Yeah.
podcast, and I certainly resonate with her story, and um, that's why I reached out, got her on the podcast. Why I really benefited from her community and her course, and that's why we're here today. But where I want to go next with this, so one of the first things I feel like that really moved the needle for me was seeing how I was waiting for some outcome to do what I love. Because
Mhm.
that was the biggest rub. I was like, man,
Mhm.
what do you want? I want to do the things that I love again. Well, why aren't
Yeah.
you doing the things that you love again? Because I feel like shit. And it's like, okay. And so oftentimes when we're tired and we feel like crap, we're taught to rest, to
Mhm.
avoid it. And then,
Mhm.
if those suggestions don't work, then you got all the detoxes and the pills and the protocols and all that stuff.
Mhm. Yeah.
But for me, it was really hurting so bad and going, you know what? I don't care if it hurts. I'm going to start doing this with being
Yeah.
hurt, with being sad, with being anxious, with not sleeping.
Yeah.
What that seems like a common thing
Yeah.
that I'm seeing in the community. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I love what you've said there. And it reminds me, I do a movement practice called Five Rhythms, and sometimes we have workshops or we dance like many hours. And after the first or the second hour, it's like the body is tired. And then often the teacher mentions that this is usually when we're most honest in our dance. This is when we actually allow ourselves to come through in a different way. And we don't need to make it big or whatever. It's like, yeah, we're tired and we show up kind of with this authenticity. And so for me, part of my illness seemed to be an invitation from life saying, like you said so well, it's like I thought I was the glue holding everything together, and showing up with 30 minutes of sleep, choosing my values over fear, and then showing up in these very imperfect ways changed my life.
Mhm.
Because all of a sudden I realized like I can show up this way. And actually, when I do, I am a bit softer and I'm less guarded and I'm more authentic and I am imperfect. And for all of these things, I had to do exposure with. And for me, it was like these statements of like, I'm willing to be seen as imperfect. I'm willing to be rejected. I'm willing for people to think I'm uneducated or foolish. All of these things that I had put this mental construct and this energy into, I had to be willing for it to kind of fall apart, to allow this more authentic version of me to come out that was vulnerable and imperfect and has feelings. And it was so ironic, right? Because when you join these nervous system programs, at least for me, I was like, great, this is going to make me perfect.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to come
Awesome.
out yeah, so regulated. I'm going to never have any like difficult emotions. Like, I'm not going to age. I just like had these wild ideas. And then what I found through it is actually this version of me emerged. And she was very imperfect, but she also, had this like shining authenticity. And so it was different than I thought, but it was also so much more deeply embodied and so much more pleasurable to be able to show up in this way.
Yeah, the real Simona is coming through instead of the performative part of us that we feel like we can show to the world. And I would also say probably not showing up a lot because
Yeah,
it feels like there's shame in the picture, like I'm not good enough or I'm not enough, like I need to
yeah.
be better before I can be seen. And when we can allow that, so much can happen when we're just vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I don't need to show up and be kind of like own the space. I don't need everyone to like me. I don't need to be the teacher of the space. I
Mhm.
don't need like I can be someone who just learns in the space, right? I can, be a participant. And all of these things were really hard for me in the past. Like I didn't know it. It wasn't conscious, but I can look back and be like, oh, there was always something in me that was trying to make sure that I could find safety anywhere I was, or I wouldn't go in that space. And of course, that makes sense in a lot of ways, and in some ways can be really smart for some people. But when I noticed how it limited my life and really limited my ability to be held by a group or a community or a partner, right? Because when we have this in play, it's like our romantic relationships, our partnerships, all of these things, they can't really get in if we are always holding this level of control and we believe that, we can't trust and life doesn't have us.
Hmm. And I want to highlight what you just said too of, I have to be uh, the funniest. I've got to make everybody happy. I got to be the fixer. I got to be perfect. These are all protective mechanisms. We think this is who we are, and
Mhm.
that's who we are when that's our personality when we have trauma. And so these are all things to observe. So if you're noticing those things about yourself, you're like, oh, that's just me. I want everybody to be happy. Yeah, you may want everybody to be happy, but also can we take a second look and go, how does that feel? Because when I hear that now, I I may have used to would have clapped for that. Oh yeah, you're the fixer. But now I feel like, oh man, that feels exhausting.
Yeah.
We can just
Yeah.
show up and be who we are. There's so much freedom that comes with that.
Yeah. And ironically, it's like those attributes still live through us, but the most beautiful part is that they live through us effortlessly. So
Hmm.
it's like, oh my gosh, I still have this deep, caring heart, but actually it doesn't take effort. And there's a real embodied clarity when I've given enough. And
Yeah.
then I step back. Or like, I still love to make people laugh and I love to smile and I love to be warm and generous. And now I can do that effortlessly. And then when my body is done with it, I can also walk away, even if it risks relationships.
Hmm.
And that for me is the freedom of meeting fear in this way and, turning towards our emotions. And all of this work for me is about sovereignty and freedom and choice
Hmm.
and being able to live my life in the most authentic way according to my values.
Yes, I love it.
Yeah.
Let's talk to the person that's hearing this and they're just dog tired. They're so fatigued and they're like, I cannot get off the couch. I feel like crap and I can't do the things that I love. The question that kind of comes to my mind is like, what's the difference between, because we're taught not to override, right?
Yeah.
Like you're gonna do too much, and
Yeah.
that's how I used to scare myself that I learned in the course.
Yeah.
What's the difference in overriding and doing it with the sensation, even
Mhm.
when we're tired? So talking to the chronic fatigue like people.
Yeah, that's such a great question. And yeah, so there's a few things I want to say, like especially about befriending fear and the gathering stream is my community space where we kind of have ongoing classes and drop-ins. And so for me, the heart of the work is that we listen to ourselves and that we allow ourselves to be held by the work. So just like I said before, most of us are like extreme doers and perfectionists. So we come in and it's like, okay, how can I take this and like make this work for me through the maximum effort.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not intentional, but it's like, oh, I'm gonna do this in a way that's like so effortful and exhausting. And so, what I invite a lot of people to is just come and listen, lay on the couch and just press play or just join the Zoom.
Mhm.
And, you choose in the moment, even if I'm going to do the practice or I'm not, or I'm just going to listen to the practice. And, when we give ourselves permission to go as slowly as we need or want to, then that takes pressure off the nervous system. When we give ourselves the felt sense and permission to be held by someone else guiding us, that takes pressure off the nervous system. And each time we take like a little bit of pressure off the nervous system, we have more capacity to begin to untangle that ball of yarn in
Mhm.
that way. So for those people, I would say, just show up and start
Yeah.
to listen and consider and be part of it. And then start to, as you gain a little bit of momentum, start to move from there.
Hmm. And that was me. That's where I was at when we were working together and doing the gathering stream. I was in the gathering stream and really active in befriending fear and the symptoms. And that's a lot of my clients. During that time, they were more fatigued clients, which is really interesting as a practitioner to have a
Yeah.
mirror across the screen here. But for me, what I told people, or something that helped me, was like you said, identifying values. One of mine was exercise. Love working out, love being in nature, love playing sports, that kind of anything I can do outside. I love it. And I was staying inside and on the couch and telling myself I need to rest this week. And the next week came and I'm resting again. And I did not like that. And I'm not here saying that rest is bad. That is definitely a big part of this work. And there's a nuance to that. But for me, it was like, okay, if I like to move and exercise and be in nature, then my non-negotiable is going to be, well, I should say, putting it on the calendar of maybe it's every other day or once a week or whatever. I'm
Yeah.
going to go for a walk, and that will help me get out of bed, despite feeling like my body felt like 1,000 pounds and wanting
Hmm.
to lay in bed. Like, okay, I'm going to get up, and it was small. Um, it was I learned about titration with Irene, and I really applied that, and so it was more of a relationship this time. Instead of like whipping myself
Hmm.
into shape, I would basically like, hey, we're going for a walk today. We know
Yes.
we love that. That's our value. What if we just go to the mailbox? And I get to
Hmm.
the mailbox and it's like, do you want to, or first off, do you want to do a workout? No. What if we just went to the mailbox? Yes, I want to do that. Get to the mailbox. What would it be like to just walk around the neighborhood? You want to do that? Yeah. And I get back, and that I would be moving through so much emotion,
Yeah.
uh, the grief of not moving, and finally doing what I love and proving to myself one step at a time, oh, this is
Hmm.
possible. And it's kind of like a thing that we say in like CrossFit is it sucked, but I didn't die. You
Yeah.
get back and you got that proof, and
Yep.
gave me energy.
Yeah.
So it's just one step at a time,
Yeah.
going with yourself, not saying rest is bad, not saying you have to do this all the time, but what would a little bit feel like? What feedback can we get from that? And what can we do with that next?
I love that. And I love how you said that we're going with ourselves. Like
Yes.
that to me is so beautiful. And that's like the heart of this work is, we're with ourselves. Like so much of when we have our peak symptoms, we're reaching out and it's like there's a desperation, like someone help me, like I'm dying, is really what it feels like. And it's like, please, like someone be here with me, like I'm overwhelmed. This is too much. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And part of the antidote to that is like, I'm with you.
Yeah.
We're doing this together. You're scared and I feel that, and it's not that we have to make it a parts work. We don't have to do like a whole framework. We can, but we don't have to. But just that simple, like, okay, I'm here with me. And that reaching, I'm gonna meet it. And the thing with the anxiety compulsion cycle is what I began to understand is that it was part of a repetition of neglect that I experienced when I was younger, where the anxiety would come up and the reaching, like, help me. And then it was like I was running away from myself to try to get away from that feeling, honestly, because that was my experience in life. I had a low capacity. That's how people treated me when I had anxiety when I was younger. And so I was repeating that cycle. And so, part of what I needed to do is turn towards it and learn my own capacity to then eventually hold space to let it move through my body through sensation.
Hmm. It's the part of ourself that learned that it wasn't allowed, and it's been out in the cold and the
Yeah.
rain, and it's been knocking on the door, and
Yeah.
we've been conditioned to open the door and slam it back.
Yeah.
It's like, would you do that to a child? No, I wouldn't do that to a child. But it's really interesting when you see that you're doing that to yourself, and there's a lot of emotion that comes up with that, and that's where I wanted to add to the being with. It seems this work, it's nuanced. It feels hard if that's what we've learned, but
Hmm.
it's freaking simple. And the thing on top of identifying my values and what I wanted to do and starting to do that in relationship to myself, the second part that really helped me And if you do these two things, if you're listening to this and you don't go into the gathering stream, and but you're dealing with these symptoms, if
Mhm.
you can identify your values and do a little bit at a time, and here's the second part, just talk nice to yourself.
Yeah.
Imagine that. Like what
I love
a that's the miracle. That's what helped me so much in the beginning is doing something that was hard, that felt like I couldn't, showing myself I could. And along the way, instead of telling myself, you got to be better or it's not good, whatever it is, whatever crap you're telling yourself, what if you were like, hey, I'm with you. I'm not going anywhere and we got this. Those simple words, like, talk to me a
Mhm.
little bit about talking nice to yourself. Such a groundbreaking concept.
I love that. Yeah, again, it's this repetition of we often don't know we're doing it, but we're raised a specific way, and then at some point the baton is handed to us, and then we just carry that on through our inner voice or the situations we choose in our lives, whatever that looks like for us. And we continue with that, shaming or rejection or pushing away or neglect. And all of it unintentional, none of it we're consciously doing and none of it we're doing on purpose. It's just like, oh, all of a sudden I start to notice, yeah, I'm super hard on myself.
Mhm.
Or I push myself in a way that's not fair, or I leave myself when times get tough. And so we begin to identify, part of what we do in the series is like we map our stress response. So we learn, am I someone who leaves my body? Am I someone who runs to another person and tries to, merge with them? Am I someone who starts to yell and scream and get angry and control people? What is my style of riding this wave? And how's it working for me? Is it bringing more love and connection to me, or is it pushing it away and is it reinforcing this original wounding story?
Mhm.
And we don't need to, I like to say this to people too, we don't need to know our original wounding story. Some of us come into the course and it's like, I don't even think I have a wounding story. My parents were great. I'm just super anxious. And all of that is the right place to start. And
Mhm.
we actually don't need to know and we don't need to, blame or look back to our parents if we don't want to or don't get there. But often things unfold in a way where we start to see like, oh, what has been repressed, what has been skipped over in the name of maintaining connection. And as we gain safety, then we're not as afraid of losing connection because I'm connected to myself. So then the blinders come off and I'm like, oh yeah, that wasn't great. There's some repair needed here, or I did lose faith there, and I can be honest about that and have healing within that.
Yes, it's so powerful to see these patterns, and it takes it really got to slow down,
Yeah.
and it's all about education. And as we learn that, we can see ourselves in that picture, in that cycle. And I think that's also where the gathering stream does really good is because it's a group, you're going to hear Simona's story, you're going to hear other people's story, and everybody's mapping and figuring this stuff out. Uh, Not in the way that keeps us stuck, but just understanding ourselves more and allowing more of ourselves. And it's like once you can see this pattern, that's really empowering as well. And now you can see that you don't have choice when you're fixing and figuring out. And eventually, once you can see this pattern, it seems like choice starts to slowly come back online.
100%. Like choice comes back online. And for me, the first time of ever feeling like supported and loved, like genuinely loved by life and love. And then eventually that translated to being able to feel loved by other people. And so, this work is always a portal back to authenticity, back to more love, back to, all of us had a wish when we were children, and it's a little bit different for each of us. And what I've found is like the surprise kind of ending of this work is we get to start to feel and live that wish.
Mm,
And for me, that's just like, oh my gosh, it makes it worth it in so many ways. And then again, when I get to see it happening all around me to so many people, it's like, wow, this is the medicine that we as humanity need right now is, tending to these wounds, making friends with all of the things that we reject and that divide us in different ways, opening our hearts and starting to live in a more loving way with each other. And it's like, wow, change is possible internally and externally.
yeah. And here's the cheat code is you are the medicine. The
Yeah,
medicine that you've been looking for is you, dude. Like, for me, I want to kind of talk about the wave and how we build trust and safety through this course. For
yeah,
me, I had a lot of education. I had done a lot of work, Feldenkrais, somatic, parts work, you name it. And what I realized after I mapped the pattern, I found ways that I would disconnect from the experience because that felt so scary.
yeah,
Like activation, it goes up a ladder and it comes back down. And that takes a lot of trust. And kind of like I touched on in the beginning, if we never have felt safety, how are we going to do this? So when
yeah,
I would in the course, it's so good. It's like I learned that when I get here, I go, this is going to be too much.
yeah,
And I think what is, and you eventually learn, you knock on that door and you get, hey, it's too much, and maybe you pull out of it. You orient, you leave. Maybe the practice is done, but when
yeah,
that happens 10 times in a row, you go. That's what was such a big thing for me. If I can trust and tell myself I can trust that I'm gonna be okay, and I can support and be with myself, talk to myself nice. Hey, all it is, hey, you got this, brother. And
yeah,
that first time you go up and boom, you come down the other side, and it is like the
yeah,
best feeling in the world. And I look back and I'm like, wow, it took 90 seconds, 3 minutes maybe,
yes,
do this process. And for five, maybe let's say 40 years, I've been
yeah,
getting to the too much. And I think that's more painful, that
mm,
backlog of emotions.
yes.
And in the course, you talk about trust in the wave. Talk about that a little bit.
Oh my gosh, you just did a beautiful job. Of talking about it. And yeah, there's this interesting phenomenon, which is most of us have never actually learned to ride out a wave of sympathetic energy. We have learned exactly as you said, when we start to map it, we realize there's one point, and at that point, all of our brains say something different. And this is the same also in like athletes too, right? You get to a certain point and the mind is like, oh no, you've pushed it too far. You're going to injure yourself. Your legs are going to break. Like, well, and it's no different in anxiety and fear and, as we map this wave. So for me, that point was my mind saying, you're going to be crazy. You're
Yeah,
going to go crazy.
yeah.
And that scared me for so many reasons. One, I have a schizophrenic brother. Two, I've seen all these different things happen. And so, out of kindness, I kept pulling myself out at that point because I thought that's what care meant. I thought that was the right thing to do. And I think likely that's also probably what my parents did. And that's what most parents do. They see their child in distress. And then when they start to get to that peak moment of distress, they don't have the capacity for it. So then they're like, okay, 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 let's just distract you. Let's pull you out of it. And as children, we don't actually learn that. We don't learn the back half of that wave, which is the very peak, and that we come down in 90 seconds, as you said. And so what we do in the course, it's like so spacious with so much choice, but it's like, yeah, after 10 times of my mind saying, I'm gonna be crazy, then for me, I got curious and I was like, well, let's see.
Yeah.
Like let's roll the dice here because I've learned enough about my mind that I think I'm ready to question this. And the first time I rolled the dice, I was scared for sure.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it didn't, I was okay.
Mhm.
And I was dysregulated and felt weird and probably had a bad sleep and more pain that night. And that's normal because I had released a ton of adrenaline. But then the second time, it was a bit different. And by the 20th time, I was like, oh my God, did I crack the code in life? Like,
It
it's
does feel
like,
like magic, 100%.
yeah, it's like magic. And I'm like, wait, what else am I avoiding because I don't want to feel this? And so as I gained more confidence with that wave, then I could show up and, go to a dance class for the first time. I could stand in front of a group of 100 people on Zoom and share my story because the worst thing that was going to happen was that I was going to go through this wave. And by then I knew how to feel my feet and my front and my back body, and I had like resourced felt senses that I could call on, and I could be and allow that wave of sensation or heat. And eventually, I even started to enjoy it because
Yeah,
it also doesn't have to be scary. It
yeah,
can also become pleasurable or interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like I've done this my whole life, and because we've mapped the pattern, and it's like, okay, I built up enough trust and education that this time I'm gonna be with myself. I'm gonna talk nice to myself. I'm gonna trust it, and I move through that, and I'm like, oh my God. And now I have this practice that I can do at home, and now all this stuff is coming up. It feels like you're treasure hunting,
Yeah.
but you have but you have this tool
Yeah.
is you that is your guide, and it's just like and it's, yeah, then you learn safety.
Yeah.
Now you're building capacity, and then
Hmm.
you're just swimming through this stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it's like the world becomes your oyster in some ways. It's like, wait, what have I been avoiding? And we don't go everywhere all at once, but it starts to get kind of interesting. It's like, and a lot of people, people who don't have anxiety, they still often don't follow that wave or they still avoid on some level. And so once we know this, it does. I remember one time saying it's like I feel like someone dropped the keys to like life in my hand, and all of a sudden, like whatever I can dream up that I have the capacity for, as long as I can be with myself and stay with the emotions of it, and I can do it.
Mhm.
And to me, my top value is freedom.
Mhm.
And so it was impossible for me to not see that like the greatest hell of my life gave me the m more freedom than most people on the planet ever get to feel,
Mhm.
and internal freedom. And to me, it's like I'm forever grateful for that.
Yeah, and when you say keys, the analogy I like is it's like I've created this jail cell with the OCD, with all the
Yeah.
complex conditioning, OCD, fixing, all the stuff. And it's like
Mm.
I've created this jail cell, and I've built enough awareness. It's like all I'm doing is looking at the grates or whatever you would call that.
Mhm.
And through the course, I build out all this awareness, and I see myself in here. I'm feeling my body, and you know what? There's keys in my pocket,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, I can just and that's what you're doing, one
Yeah.
little bit at a time, um, with this work.
Yeah, yeah, and no matter where you start, for both of us, it was not a good place. Like for me, it's like 30 minutes of sleep a night, like, 20, 30 symptoms, POTS, dysautonomia, blood sugar all over the place, all the different things that could be happening were happening in my body. And it was a slow and steady process, but all of us, like our brains are plastic, right? Are neuroplastic. And so we're able to change and move with them, and there's no exceptions.
Mhm.
And so it's just really important for people to know that there is a path to freedom. There is a path of also being with and feeling deeply resourced. It's not just going out and doing life. It's like first, you're going to finally feel that connection that most of us have been craving. And then from there, we gain our freedom.
Hmm. Um, for someone like you and I who went through all the courses,
Yeah.
you come into this work having your preferences, having the
Yeah.
things that you like.
Yes.
I remember I'm a big fan of somatic and big fan of parts work. I love Feldenkrais. I love building capacity. I think there's a time and a place for DBT. I think there's exposure work. And
Yeah.
it's like we kind of want to check the boxes.
Yeah.
You come in, hey, Simona, I think I asked you this before. Are you a somatic practitioner? Like, do you know? So like let's just rattle. I think I rattled off a few right there, but let's
Yeah.
rattle off how you've kind of weaved this course for those
Yeah.
that are experienced and they're like, because there's too little too soon, too much too soon, too little too
Yeah.
late. It's like,
Yeah.
is this for me? Because I think this can be for a beginner that needs
Yeah.
to titrate and do tiny bits. And I think
Yeah.
it's also good for someone who's advanced. And because I think it's going to accelerate. That's what it did for me. It's
Yeah.
accelerate your practice. So, like, what are all the things that you've combined and weaved all together with this practice? Like, what are people going to get when they?
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about the community. That's a whole nother. We're just talking about befriending fear. So I guess let's say the community because there's so much in there.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I think like as a former hypervigilant people pleaser, I'm aware of the different things that people want and what they're looking for. And for me, I really wanted to build something at the intersection of many of these modalities that I had trained in. And as I went through different neuroplasticity programs, for me, there was components that were missing. Or when I went through different somatic programs, there again were components that I noticed people getting stuck in. And so for me, it really is an intersection of, somatic work and then also top-down work. And so we look at beliefs and we look at thoughts and we look at the meaning we made out of events that got stored in our body. Um, I'm trained in somatic parts work. We bring parts work in a little bit, but I also find with this community, sometimes parts work can become a compulsion. So people are
Yep.
constantly trying to reassure their parts, and then they have like 500 parts they're talking to every day. And so I also, so we just hold that loosely in a lot of ways, but it's woven into it. Um, and then there's like there's movement pieces, and then there's deep resourcing. And for me, um, I wasn't able, people would be like, oh, we need to co-regulate with each other. And when I came in, it was like I had no trust for other humans. I didn't know that necessarily, but also in my sensitized state, I was, a little bit paranoid. I was like deeply untrusting. There was no co-regulation happening in communities for me. I needed something different to start. And for me, that started with like earth and nature. And that also turned into kind of higher power or the mystery or faith, whatever that looks like for people. And these components are woven into this because they're essential to carry us through, especially when we've had interpersonal trauma and we can't trust that relationship. And so that's kind of woven through as well. And then there's this depth work in here. There's kind of this like archetypal work that we look at as well. And then digging into these pieces of like repressed emotions. There's some trauma work, but through it all, there's this, part of what I really believe is that we don't have to dig for anything. So there's no going backwards in this. We just look at, my kind of biggest piece that I bring to this is I'm a mindfulness teacher and like a long time meditator. And so I'm interested in this moment right now. And so in this moment right now, everything I've lived through is going to be expressing in its own way. I don't have to look backwards. In the symptom I'm having right now tells the story of me and my mother, tells the how I relate to it, tells the story of where and when I felt abandoned. And I don't even need to know that, But what we do in the course is we work relationally with what's here too. And so that's a key element that's often missing in other courses.
Yeah, yeah. That it pulls everything together, and it's done in a way that's so accepting and allowing of everything. You
Mm.
get all these tools. I think of like you get your shovel, you get your flashlight, you
Yeah.
got your safety vest.
Yeah.
You're in all of these things, and these tools have to happen, and you can go from practitioner to practitioner, and you get a little bit here and a little bit there. But you work with someone like Simona in her community. She also does one-on-one. But you get access to all the tools. You have to use all the tools at one time. It's like
Yeah.
whenever you see someone who's gotten really good with one tool, people like us that are sensitized, it ain't going to be just one tool.
Yeah.
So, hey, here's the shovel. Great. Now I need to go to this course, and now I need to go over here. And it's
Yeah.
like the picture isn't there. And I've
Mhm.
experienced that going practitioner to practitioner. And I've told you over and over again, this course feels like magic because you're getting all the tools. It's all there, and it's done in a way that's titrated. It builds capacity, it builds regulation, it builds safety when you've never experienced that because you got the tools and you learn. And I think this is the biggest thing. I want people to really hear this, that what is here is what's the next thing, that we can trust, that we're meant to interact with that. I was like, you mentioned digging, that can get us in trouble if we're just trying to. I have these traumas and I need to get to them.
Mhm.
That's not how it works. Can
No.
we trust our nervous system to give us what we need and know that that what it is giving us is it's what's meant for now. That pathway in the brain is open and it's saying, "Come and get me." That little kid is at the door. It's knocking, and it's
Yes.
like we have the choice of we can be afraid of that, but we learn the patterning, and when we can move towards that and welcome that kid in and give it what it needs, let express those emotions, come through that wave. Well,
Mhm.
damn. I mean, it's like it's just so well done, and I was so scared that I would do too much, and that's how I scared myself. And so
Yeah.
through that patterning and learning all that and learning to trust what's here,
Yeah.
it felt like I'm a wave surfer now. It felt like it felt magic.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, and it's yeah, you put such like beautiful words and I really appreciate too. Like I really see in you and I appreciate that you really understand yeah, like the depth of the course and the material and it like moved me. I'm like, "Oh, wow." Like you really it really landed and I so appreciate that and I also want to say for people who when I was doing this work, it's like I had, all the histamine stuff and I had all of these different pieces. And so, and like I had all the heavy metals, I had, all the different things. And so people come and they're like, well, yeah, like how is this, my stuff is physical and you're doing this work. And so part of what I think can be helpful to hear is two things. So one, in my own value system, I'm like, you do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Do this and that, do the things that make you feel good. Follow your intuition with what works for you. And then the second piece is that we don't have to believe that any of these conditions aren't real. So it's like, of course, this like the histamine is real. It's releasing. It's affecting this. It's affecting my brain like this. All of these things can absolutely be true. But what can also be true is in that system, if I'm in a chronic fear loop, then I'm like tight and tense and things aren't moving in my body and I'm shutting things down and when I give those pathways, fear and attention, they start firing off all the time and they make associations. And so something that might have been acute after a virus becomes chronic because I'm terrified and checking it all the time. And now I've created a neural pathway that keeps repeating. And so the way that this work works with these physical, true, real conditions is when we bring the body into a greater sense of equilibrium, when we learn to not feed fear and attention into symptoms, then they do start to literally melt away
Mhm.
and they do start to leave as our body finds its equilibrium and can offer both like healing and letting go and a release of repetition. And that looks different for everyone. And that part is a bit of a mystery, because the body is a mystery. But ultimately, it's important to know that you don't have to think your symptoms are just anxiety because they aren't. They're physical things that have happened in the body. And through a great blessing, this work can bring your body to a state where those things change.
Yeah, I like that you said and because I was always looking for a root cause. Is this physical or is this in my head or am I crazy? And or is that's black or white? It's all or nothing. It's like, what if it's an and? And
Yeah.
what if you get to do both? And what if
Yes.
you get to experiment and try and learn to trust and see and ultimately change your perception? It
Mhm.
changed my perception. I have a whole different view on physical symptoms. Not to say that they don't exist.
Yeah.
Um, I learned a lot. Some of those things really helped me. Um, but trying to be the doer of my body is ultimately adding the additional fear to that loop is what
Yeah.
kept me stuck, controlling everything.
Yeah, and it's always so interesting, I find too. It's like sometimes even when we let go of being the doer and then we become unstuck, then it's all of a sudden my friend is like, "Oh, hey, you should like check out my osteopath." And then you go and they do like one little adjustment and then all of a sudden the thing that's been plaguing you for 10 years seems to have made a correction. So it's also this openness, like life responds in many different ways,
Mhm,
right? And there's no and often when we're in the limbic state, it's like, what's the one right thing? And I'm going to do that forever.
mhm,
And it's like, no, a healthy nervous system is fluid and responsive and changing and flexible and is fed by many different parts of the gathering stream, right? And so that's a piece of this too, where it's like we stay open and we allow nuance and we allow change and through that we get fed in so many more ways than we thought.
Yeah, and it makes me go back to my last little. So, and ultimately, we talked about this before we hopped on. We go from the fixing and figuring out. So we
Yeah,
take some of those compulsions, we put them on a shelf, we
yeah,
watch.
yeah,
And I'll say that when I worked with Simona, one of the things she got me to do was I was fixing and figuring out with my supplements. And
yeah,
so we put those into a schedule, like a
yeah,
little pill thing, and that took me 2 weeks to do that. But when I did, now I don't run to the supplement jar anymore. But
yeah.
now, and one of the things that really helped me is I went from fixing and figuring out to I went to choice and trust, and I
Mhm.
learned which of the supplements I needed to support my body more and
Yeah,
to be able to stabilize. I'm on hormone replacement therapy,
yeah,
and I take testosterone, and I've learned that testosterone gets depleted. I mean, excuse me, pregnenolone is a mother hormone that gets depleted when we're on testosterone. But I was so afraid to take more of that. And when
mhm,
I saw my labs and I learned to trust my body and I wasn't afraid of what happened, I
mhm.
tried and I trusted, and that was a big part of a good example of physical and the mind body trust choice stuff kind of coming together. And I think that's a good example there.
Yeah, I love that. And I love, like, I just love how you put that. And the choice and trust is such a beautiful piece because, it's like the trust is that we can like sink into that and we believe in it and it holds us. And then it's not an either or. It's also, oh, I have an impulse and I want to make a choice, or this is my value, or I see this happening with my body and I want to make a decision so I can do this or feel this way. And like that is the blessing of being alive as a human. We get to make choices.
Mhm.
We get to experiment with our lives and how we show up. And that is our right if we're free enough or we live somewhere where we're free enough to do that. And it's so beautiful. And so that's the heart of this work is that at the end of the day, okay, I've regained my sovereignty. And now within that, who and what do I want to be in this life? And we get to start to choose that, which is incredible.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
if somebody's, gosh, is dealing with symptoms, it's fixing and figuring out, um, chronic fatigue, anxiety, all these different symptoms. If you read Claire Weeks's book, and this feels like you, and you're interested in the gathering stream, I know you have a live version coming up. So tell us about how do we access the gathering stream? What's the live Befriending Fear that you got coming up? What's that look like?
Yeah, so Befriending Fear is starting on January 20th. And there's a teaching class that's on the Tuesdays, and then there's a Q&A and like practice circle that's on the Thursdays. And this year, Befriending Fear is part of the Gathering Stream. So the Gathering Stream is my community space. It's a subscription space that you go into, and we have a huge video library of all sorts of courses like befriending anger, befriending symptoms and sensations, befriending shame. And then we have live classes. So we have meditations, we have heart coherence circles, and then we have open mentoring with me, and then these live teaching pieces. So the Befriending Fear course runs for 12 weeks in the Gathering Stream. The Gathering Stream is wildly affordable. I've tried to really, it's kind of a lot of people come to me and ask me questions and want to do coaching and can't afford it. So it was really my answer to that. So it's a sliding scale. It's between 48 and 88 American dollars, what people can afford. You get to choose. And then that's the price each month. And then you can stay as long as you want. You self-cancel it. There's no like secret tricks or blocks in it. But ultimately, yeah, I tried to make it really easy and really affordable. Less than 2 sessions with me, you can have the full 12 weeks of the course.
Yeah, and I love that. If it's not been clear, I highly recommend and definitely endorse the Gathering Stream and Befriending Fear. That's why I wanted to do this interview to share this with you guys because it impacted me so much. And I have not, and in the community, the people in the community are amazing. Simona's awesome. You learn a lot from Simona. She's the queen of emotions. There's a lot of teaching and learning and really it's great for wherever you're at. I've been doing this for 4 or 5 years, and I was able to get some results really fast. Able to kind of combine the things that I had learned, and I see people that are very new and see them go really fast as well in the community. It's there's even WhatsApp groups and breakouts that people have outside of this, and it's just it's what healing should look like, and it's motivated me. That's what I want to do is I want to create a community similar to Simona's, and yeah, I can't recommend this highly enough. And like we mentioned at the beginning, I've got a discount code. That's why I was looking at my phone a minute ago. I couldn't find that. I think it's Mitch 10 or Mitch 20. I will put that in the show notes if you're watching this. Um, Click that and hope to see you in there. So,
Thank you.
Simona, thank you so much for coming on again. This is an epic round two. I had so much fun.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And so, guys, I got to remember to say this. You want to follow the Rooted Community YouTube page, give us a comment, give us a like. If you have questions, drop them below. I would love to answer them. And thank you so much for tuning in. Simona, thanks so much again, and we'll see you again here soon.
Bye.
Bye bye.